Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
South African-born Trevor Noah is the new host of The Daily Show, which is a satirical news programme with millions of viewers in the United States. He's come to London with the launch of his book, Born a Crime, about growing up in apartheid South Africa. Now, I started my interview by asking him about why he felt the need to write such a personal story.
Well, because I wanted to share stories. You know, I always wanted to write a book. I never thought I would have the opportunity. I also never thought I'd have the time. And then finally, those two came together. And really what I wanted was to share my story from my point of view, and also, you know, just what it was like growing up with my mom, a single child, you know, born during apartheid, and then living and growing up into the new democracy that was South Africa. And that really is you know, part of the tale in the book is the coming of age of both myself and a country that was doing the same thing.
The book's called Born a Crime, and you'd say that being a mixed race boy in South Africa was a crime worse than treason.
Well, in many ways, you know, it wasn't, obviously I used that, you know, with dramatic license, but really what was happening in South Africa was, under apartheid laws, you were meant to be pure of blood. You know, there were laws of miscegenation, as they were called, that were designed to keep people only with their own. And so being the child of a white father and a black mother was a fundamental abomination of those laws.
You've certainly not got the typical background of a kind of US TV star. How have you found filling the very big shoes of Jon Stewart on The Daily Show?
Well, I found it's a monumental task. If anything, you know, it's not even filling his shoes because he left with them. It's, you know, making my own shoes and then seeing how those fit. So essentially, it's been the process of creating something new whilst still inheriting an amazing legacy. And it's been an interesting journey, one that I've enjoyed immensely. You know, sometimes have been tougher than others, as any new venture should be, but it's one where, you know, if I get it right, it's one of the most rewarding feelings in the world, and if I get it wrong, I get to come back and try it again the next day.
And you've certainly got quite a lot of material to work with now that Donald Trump's the new president-elect.
Definitely. It's a world that I genuinely did not believe we would be living in. It's a world I'm growing more and more accustomed to every single day. And yeah, there will be no shortage of material. I feel like it'll be an embarrassment of riches.
You once described Donald Trump as a perfect African president. What did you mean by that?
Well, he's a consummate African dictator, more specifically. You know, I wouldn't want to tarnish all African leaders. There are some really good ones. But Donald Trump, for me, you know, has more of the makings of an African dictator. You know, self-aggrandizing, you know, self-enriching, really somebody who seems like he's in it all for himself, and yet has the ability to charm and convince the masses that he's a man of the people. And so when I spoke about that, and I continue to with Donald Trump, you can see the parallels, you know, and it's not exactly the same thing, but you can genuinely see how that type of leader comes to be and how that type of leader gets into power and keeps power. The latter of which we will only see if, you know, it's possible for Donald Trump to achieve, because people say it's impossible in America, but he's done everything that's been impossible up until this point.
From the perspective of someone who grew up in apartheid, are you worried about some of the divisions that we see in America at the moment? Definitely.
But, you know, those are divisions that unfortunately are, you know, remnants of a racist system. You can't erase those things overnight. South Africa still has, you know, those scars and open wounds from apartheid. And you realize that ending the system is essentially the beginning of the journey, you know, and America has suffered from that. America's realizing every single day, you know, as we look at the laws and the way the justice system has been designed, that the code that is written at the very foundation of a lot of these laws is designed to oppress. And so that's a very tough place to be in, because you're trying to do two things at the same time. One is move a country forward as a whole, but at the same time realize that, you know, the very foundations of the country cannot be separated from its racialized past.
Do you think it's something that we're seeing across the world as well? We've had, of course, Brexit in the UK. In France, you have the potential rise of the far right too. Is this a global phenomenon?
Well, it looks like it. I mean, you know, we're seeing the rise of, you know, right-wing nationalism all across the globe. In Greece, in you know, in Italy, in Austria, in France, in the UK, in America. It seems like it's growing all over the world. The truth is, populism is growing all over the world. The only problem is left-wing populism is based on a fairness, and fairness doesn't seem to appeal to people as much. You know, left-wing populism has also grown all over the world. You know, you saw it in the US with Bernie Sanders. You see it in, you know, in Greece as well. You see it in places. But unfortunately, you know, saying that it's not working, we need to bring down the banks, we need to change the system, and we all need to be fair to each other, just doesn't seem to connect as much as they are the problem, let's get rid of them.
I'm delighted to be joined now by a prince of political satire, Trevor Noah. The South African-born comic was last year given one of the toughest TV gigs, succeeding the legendary Jon Stewart as host of America's Daily Show. He's also written an absolutely gripping book, Born a Crime, about his upbringing as a mixed-race child during apartheid. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to just explain what the title means?
Well, the title is as simple as that. I was born during apartheid, at a time when it was illegal for my parents to be a couple, a time when black and white people were not allowed to interact, you know, if they were different races. And I was a product of that breaking of the law, and so I was born a crime. And really the book is more than just about being born during apartheid. It's about growing up in a post-apartheid South Africa. A lot of people think apartheid is when the story ends, but I often think that's really when our story begins.
I mean, Donald Trump has been accused of stigmatizing immigrants, Mexicans, Muslims. Is there a risk that Americans being born now in America will, in a sense, be going through some of what you went through, being born, in a sense, a crime?
Well, we hope not. The scariest thing is nobody knows what a Trump future holds, because Trump has been particularly vague during the campaign with regards to telling anybody. You know, the media and the press focused on Hillary's emails, and they focused on a few things that Trump said, but Trump was really good at spinning a cycle that didn't give anybody a chance to focus on what he said. And so now questions are coming to the fore. What is a Muslim registry? What is that registry going to be used for? What is a ban? How are people going to be policed under the state? What does tougher law and order mean on black communities, or the inner cities, as Trump calls them? These are all questions that nobody knows the answers to, and I guess it's not dissimilar to Brexit, where now people are going, oh wait, we didn't actually know what this was about. Can we talk about this? Can we see what we can do differently?
Now, part of what your gripping book is about is trying to work out, in a sense, who you are, you know, in a country where it was illegal for a black woman to sleep with a white man.
Yes.
You know, there are times when you think of yourself, or you know, there's a sort of shoplifting incident where you didn't get done for it because they thought you were white. And I mean, this whole issue of identity is absolutely huge in politics at the moment. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because fundamentally, if you look at it, human beings are tribalistic. So we look at tribes, and that's how we figure out where we are and where we want to belong. One of the easiest way to define a tribe is by its color. We cannot deny that race was created as a construct to oppress certain people. You know, so in places where there is no race, people find different reasons to oppress, whether it be religion or tribal ethnicities. But you can't deny that race itself is a tool that is constantly used to oppress certain people. And so in politics, it's much easier to point and say those people when you can put a race to it, as opposed to when you cannot. That's why it's so powerful in politics.
How racist is America compared to South Africa?
Why? I don't know. I mean, I don't have a measure for that. You know, unfortunately, there's no tool that you can use. I wish I had a racism Richter scale that could help me measure it, but I
you have said that you think that, in a sense, Americans are in denial about.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I've lived in the country for years, and I hear conversations You know, all over the world you'll hear, you know, denial over racism. But to be in a country where people say things like, well, slavery wasn't that bad. At least people got a hot meal and they knew where they would sleep. And at least slaves got to stay with their children. You didn't have a fatherless issue. And you're going, are you genuinely saying this? Do you think slavery was better? And some people do believe that. They go, yes, I don't even think it was as bad as they make it out to be in the movies. I don't think it was that bad. Whereas in South Africa, although you have some people who try and deny it, one thing that we did, especially with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was we had to come to grips with the fact that this happened, it was real, and there were people who perpetrated these crimes, not just white people, by the way, but black people on other black people, and that was the core of what the TRC was about.
Now, one of the striking things over here was the extent to which Donald Trump seemed to harness the Brexit vote for his own campaign. What does Brexit actually mean, do you think, for most Americans?
Well, it's strange because I was reading on Brexit before it really blew up in the US. I was fascinated by it, you know. And then Trump started embracing this after, you know, Brexit plus, he called it, you know, the upgrade to Brexit. and I was fascinated because once Brexit happened, I'm still fascinated by the conversations British people have. Like you said on the show earlier, people saying, well, now that they know what Brexit's about, people want to know if they can vote on it, which just blows my mind. I'm like, what were you voting on the first time? If you say now that you know what it's about, that's like somebody saying to you, well, now that I know what marriage is about, can you propose to me again? You know, but that's really what Trump was going for. I think he wasn't going for the separating, but I think he was going for the nationalistic feeling of Brexit. Trump was going for the we're getting our country back feeling of Brexit, and that's something that you can see that Trump has really...
And has it entered the language in America? Do people talk about Brexit?
No, because the truth is, look, in America, it's a flash in the pan. It's like that Brexit thing happened. It influenced the US. There's this Nigel Farage guy who's Trump's
Well, I was going to ask you, so Nigel Farage's relationship with Donald Trump is a huge story here. Has it been noticed?
He's just like a weird, quirky guy in the US. They're just like, yeah, Trump's got this weird British friend who comes here and convinces him of, I don't know what it's about. Because you must remember, what's happening in the US is so big and it's so strange that Americans don't have time to focus on Brexit now. They're going off into this world of who are Trump's appointees, what are Trump's plans as president, and is he going to be presidential? And then he tweets an exclamation point, Fidel Castro is dead. And then people are like, oh, man, we're in for one hell of a ride.
So, very briefly, a lot of people over here are very scared about Trump as president. Are we right to be scared?
I think we're right to be scared because we don't know. You know, most of the time in politics, you go, I don't like this politician because of these plans that they have, or I do like them. But not knowing is sometimes more frightening. What's the most frightening thing about Trump is that he has flip-flopped on every position. He seems to go with the last person who was with him in the room. And that's a frightening, proposition to have before us, especially when that is the president of the most powerful nation in the world.
Yeah, I think many people would agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Trevor.
Thank you for having me.
Really grateful. So, my thanks to Trevor Noah.
I've been getting